Hello, and welcome to Mailing It, the official podcast of the United States Postal Service. I'm Carla Kirby.
And I'm Jonathan Castillo. I'm really excited for this episode, Carla, because it's one of those that takes us behind the scenes at the Postal Service. This time around, we're going to explore a challenge that all businesses face, but one that is particularly complicated for Postal. Having an effective pricing strategy is one of the most important factors in driving business success. Since the Postal Service is required by law to operate like a business and cover its costs, postal pricing is critical to our long-term success.
That's absolutely right, Jonathan. What makes this topic so interesting is that over the years, there have been a number of challenges to the way the Postal Service can price its products. As a result, we've learned the hard way that pricing limitations can have serious repercussions on businesses' ability to cover costs, serve our customers, and also compete with our rivals. Here to tell us more about some of those challenges and how we've been able to overcome them is Sharon Owens, VP of Pricing and Costing at the Postal Service. Sharon, welcome to Mailing It.
Well, thank you. I am so excited to be here. This is just going to be fabulous.
There's so much to talk about when it comes to this topic, right? But I think the best place to start is who's in charge of setting the prices for the Postal Service?
Well, believe it or not me. Okay, it starts with Congress. So Congress establishes the objectives and the factors that guide our pricing framework. Then we have a regulator, and the regulator really gets to set the rules and the regulations regarding all of our pricing constraints, and then they get to check our math or evaluate the compliance. These members of the regulator, the Postal Regulatory Commission, are appointed by the president. They're nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. But finally, it's really up to our governors. The governors of the Postal Service are responsible for the pricing strategy and the timing of price changes. Our governors are also nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, and they have a fiduciary duty to ensure that the Postal Service can generate sufficient revenue to provide universal service for the entire country.
Okay, so now that we know who all is involved, I think it's important to provide context on how the Postal Service sets and adjusts its prices. So I think it's safe to say a lot of people think of the Postal Service mostly as a way to send and receive letters and packages. They want to know when their letters and packages will get to where they're going, of course, and how much it'll cost. But there's a whole lot more to the Postal Service than what most people see at the retail counter. I think we could agree on that. So tell us a few things that influence pricing that most people probably don't know or realize.
Well, it's very complicated. It's not like any other business would set their prices, I assure you. But to start with, the mail sent by consumers and small businesses at our post offices, that only accounts for 20% of our business. So the other 80% come from commercial mailers and actually even some of our competitors. Now, when we evaluate prices, just like other businesses, we look at how a product is performing, how sensitive customers are to price increases, and the costs associated with delivering that product. And our goal is to maximize revenue while also considering stakeholder impact and economic and market conditions. Most businesses don't really have to consider their stakeholders when setting their prices. Now, our objective for every product is to generate enough revenue to cover its cost. However, there are some mail products that currently are not profitable. Like, for example, we lose about 18 cents on every newspaper or magazine we deliver. So we have an obligation to recognize, and this is one of those fun facts, the educational, cultural, and scientific informational value of our products. Probably other businesses don't have to do that. We do. And because of that, we used to just barely cover our costs for these periodicals. And over time, the cost has increased faster than we've been able to raise our prices.
I think one thing that's important to keep in mind, Sharon, too, is that the Postal Service is almost entirely self-funded. The revenue that we get from the sale of postage is what keeps us going. Right. So the federal government reimburses less than 1% really of the Postal Service's cost. Now, the federal government also imposes a universal service obligation on the Postal Service. That means that we have to deliver to the entire U.S. population. And that includes, remote areas that other delivery services just tend to exclude because serving them isn't profitable, right? In order to reach all those areas, the Postal Service maintains the largest physical and logistical infrastructure of any non-military government institution. So my question then would be, how does the universal service obligation affect the Postal Service's costs and the prices that we charge?
Yeah, that's a great question. So think of it this way. We charge the same amount to mail a letter around the block as we do to get the same letter to the other side of the country. And obviously, the cost of doing this is very different. We want to make it easier to mail a letter, so we want to have a stamp be like our flat rate envelopes and boxes. It costs the same no matter where it's going. But in the past, the Postal Service used to be able to set all these prices to break even. That became much more difficult when the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act, we call it the PAEA, was passed in 2006. With this law, the price increase for every class of mail is individually capped. But the cost structure and the mail mix has changed significantly in the past 17 years, especially as volume has declined due to electronic diversion. We must go to every house, whether we have one piece from the mailbox or 6 pieces. And this is a really interesting fun fact. The number of pieces delivered to households has dropped from about 5.5 pieces per day in 2007 to 2.9 pieces per day in 2022. That's a 47% drop, which really impacts our unit cost.
You had mentioned earlier about something about electronic diversion. What is that?
Well, I tell you what, we have competition for really all of our products. You can now send an email instead of doing a personal correspondence. So many of us pay our bills online instead of writing that check and putting it in the mail. And then think about advertising. Advertisers can send you emails or use social media and digital channels instead of advertising through the mail. So that's what we call electronic diversion. When customers, whether it's individuals or large businesses, choose to use electronic means to communicate instead of using hard copy print.
Got it.
Definitely good to know. So we've talked about the Postal Accountability and Enhancement Act on previous podcasts, but not specifically as it relates to pricing. So what was the PAEA and how did it impact the Postal Service's finances?
Yeah, that was a huge impact to pricing and costing. So in the 35 years from when we became the U.S. Postal Service instead of the Post Office Department until PAEA, the Postal Service implemented rate changes through a lengthy process. It routinely took about 10 months to litigate, and so we only change prices every 2 or 3 years. I mean, you could make a baby quicker than you could change a price before PAEA. So in 2006, Congress attempted to resolve this unpredictable and lengthy process by creating 2 tiers of products. The market-dominant products covered most letters and flat-shaped mail, and then the competitive products covered most of our package and shipping products. So these packaged products are considered competitive because the private sector carriers offer similar products and services. And because there's competition, direct competition, the Postal Service has more flexibility in pricing these products.
Now, Sharon, the way you described it there, it seems that most of the Postal Service's products would fall into the competitive category, right? But wouldn't the market-dominant products be the most expensive to maintain?
Right. So as we talked about it, there certainly is competition for letters and flats, these hard copy ways to correspond. But the Postal Service is the only entity who can put mail into a mailbox. And because we have that mailbox monopoly, the regulators determine that that's a market-dominant product, since we are the only provider to be able to put hard copy mail into mailboxes. So, but these products account for about 95% of our volume. Yes, wow. 95% are mail and letters and flats, but only 5% of the volume are packages. But did you know a parcel costs about 14 times more than the cost of a letter? And a lot of our costs are fixed. I mean, think about it. We go to every house every day. Again, whether we add a letter or a parcel, we're going there anyway. So we share that delivery infrastructure. And it doesn't vary whether we get more letters or packages. So Like I said, we've gotten more flexibility in how we price our shipping products. That's going to allow us to compete effectively with the alternate delivery companies. But we have to ensure that the price exceeds the cost of adding another package to this network and make an appropriate contribution to these fixed and shared costs. And our regulator is determining that appropriate share. Now, market dominant products, totally different pricing regime. They are capped at inflation. So the PAEA said we can only raise on average first-class mail or marketing mail at the change of inflation for urban consumers. So it's the CPI-U is what each class of mail was capped at. So the combination of this cap-based pricing, we were capped at inflation, but then the 2008 Great Recession really impacted mail volume, and then we've got this continuous electronic diversion. So as our volume declined, our prices just couldn't keep up with these increasing costs.
And the PAEA also did mandate that the Postal Service prepay billions of dollars in pension and healthcare costs. And it sounds like that put the Postal Service in a very awkward position financially. Now, luckily, with the PSRA, that pre-funding has been repealed. But aside from that, what impact did that have on the Postal Service's ability to invest not only in its people, but also the operations?
Absolutely. So in the 14 years since the price cap was instituted, we could have generated $55 billion in more revenue if we'd known then what we know now and had additional authority to account for this decline in mail volume and the growth in delivery points and to account for our retirement obligations. So this loss of revenue resulted in really jeopardizing our long-term financial stability. We didn't have enough cash to invest in our massive network, even those basic needs. So we have very old vehicles, outdated equipment, and tons of deferred maintenance in our facilities. You know, the PAE just didn't address the fact that when mail volume declines and our delivery points are increasing, that's really going to impact the cost structure in a way that we can't control. So, and it also, didn't really put together the impact. They were capping our ability to raise revenue while also saddling us with a payment of $5.5 billion a year to pre-fund those retirement obligations.
And we were the only agency with that requirement. As I understand it, it took several years, but some relief did come in 2020. Tell us a little bit about that.
Right. So it was late 2020, about 4 years after evaluating whether the system worked, and 3 years after determining it didn't work, the Postal Regulatory Commission established a new pricing structure. I mean, we were just talking about where capping our products at the change in inflation just didn't address those different cost impacts. So the regulator, even before the law passed, said that they needed to give us additional authorities. And so they provided us with a couple of formulas to use. So good thing that we have a lot of smart quantitative people working on pricing and costing. So rather than relying solely on an inflation-based model, the regulator added additional pricing authorities that with a formula that addressed the decline in the mail volume and the increase in delivery points. We call that mail density, pieces per delivery. And there's a formula that gives us additional pricing authority, the ability to raise prices more than just the change in inflation to address this cost structure. And then we also got another really complex formula that will allow us to catch up with our amortization payments for our retirement fund. So this formula would allow over 5 years for us to catch up and recover through additional pricing authority the payments that were past due on to pay into our retirement funds. And then there was also additional authority for the classes that don't cover its cost. I mentioned we lose money on periodicals. Well, this is at 2% a year. We get to add 2% more to the price of newspapers and magazines to help catch them up so that their revenue will cover the cost. So the Postmaster General's Delivering for America plan seeks to leverage this new pricing authority. It helps to rebalance for that 15 years of a defective, broken pricing model that just wasn't going to be sufficient. This new authority, that density authority, the retirement authority, and this authority for underwater products is going to be worth $44 billion in the next 10 years. That's a really key part of the plan. So we applied this as soon as that 2020 law revision came in like the end of November. Well, we were able to use that authority in August of 2021 and really start making up for the fact of that lost mail volume and our retirement obligations. So we applied that in 2021, and we're going to be using that authority until we're on that path to financial stability.
What else can you tell us about the Postal Service's current mail pricing strategy and our approach given the organization's financial position and overall market conditions?
Well, so since the new pricing structure has gone into effect, we've fully used all that additional rate authority available to raise prices because we have that whole path to undo the financial harm that was associated with the PAEA pricing restrictions. So since January of 2022, we've started raising prices twice a year to first and foremost address the rising costs associated with inflation. It just so happened that we got this additional authority right as inflation started to skyrocket. And most of the changes that you've seen in our price is mostly associated with that rise of inflation. But we have taken full advantage of this additional authority that the regulator, determined that we needed, and we did. So for most retail customers, this means that the forever stamp price has been increasing a few cents every 6 months. And in fact, we just announced that we're planning on increasing the price of a stamp to 68 cents in January. Now, our regulator is checking that math and checking the compliance, but we hope to know that was approved very shortly. Now, as inflation declines and our financial position improves, it'll make less sense to change price twice a year.
So before we hop into packages, I want to hone on one thing that you mentioned, the forever stamp. So can you explain to our listeners the forever stamp? I know I have my own vantage point of what the forever stamp is, but you touched on it. So the pricing for the forever stamp, once you purchase it, it is good for a first-class mailing, regardless of the future price of stamps. Is that correct?
That's right. One of the things we do when trying to set prices and design our products is really think about ease of use. We want to be easy to use for consumers and small businesses. That's why our letter prices aren't zoned and don't vary by distance. And another way that we're able to be easy to use is to say when you buy that stamp, it'll be good forever. And we do mean forever. So whether you bought that stamp 10, 15 years ago, it is still good. If you have them in your desk drawer, you can still pull them out. They probably have a Liberty Bell on them. But now all of our stamps, we're going to make the first class single piece 1 ounce stamp will be good forever. We do it for international mail too.
Good to know. Definitely good to know.
And
great for our listeners.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like if I purchase many sheets, many panes of stamps now, I might be saving money in the future. I don't know.
Well, sure. Yes. We hope you use them. Keep mailing those bills or cards or birthday.
Hence the forever stamp. It's good for forever
stamp.
So moving on to packages. So for packages, how does the Postal Service's pricing compare with its competitors? And how much does their pricing factor into the Postal Service's own pricing decisions, given that it's a competitive market?
Well, that's right. So our competitors, they price their products dynamically based on market conditions. They include lots of surcharges, fuel surcharges, delivery surcharges that improve their yield. But we don't. We have upfront pricing. We do monitor what they're doing with their prices, and then we compare, well, what's our value relative to theirs? What's our time in transit? we offer free boxes with some of our products. So we determine whether we're able to be the lowest price provider. We want to make sure that we have the most affordable alternative. And I believe we offer significant value to our retail and commercial customers, and we're priced competitively to win the business. But you got to remember that we have a regulator. We don't have loss leaders. All of our products must cover their cost and help fund that fixed and shared infrastructure. So we have different prices for consumers that walk into a post office versus use our online solution. And we can negotiate contracts with large shippers just like the competitors. Again, as long as that contract covers its cost. Now, despite our competitors announcing that they were going to do a peak surcharge for their shipping services, we announced that we were not, because we're ready for peak. We're not going to have to really increase our staffing or our capacity to handle your business. We are ready to go, and so we are not going to have to pass on higher additional costs to our customers. We are ready to compete and win your business this peak.
Sharon, I think it's so great that you mentioned it about the no holiday surcharges this year. I mean, it's absolutely something that is been a little bit different for us from the past. So I think it's definitely something that is great for the Postal Service and heading into this holiday season. But let me ask you this. What are some other ways commercial clients can save money when, kind of working with the Postal Service?
Right. So the most expensive way to what cost us the most is when you use our post office infrastructure. It's there for convenience, and we would love for you to use it. But, big commercial customers, they can avoid that cost. Maybe they can sort their mail by zip code or even all the way down to the carrier route. That saves a lot of processing steps. They could enter their mail closer to the destination, so they're not going all the way across the country with their products. And that works for some mailers because maybe they're only mailing locally and it's easier for them to just use part of our network. We pass along that cost savings in terms of discounts. Small businesses can save money when they use meters instead of stamps. So we encourage the use of meters. Now, for our competitive products, we offer lower than published prices on our USPS.com click and ship. It's our online platform. And so that's a cheaper alternative than going into the post office. You can print your label and even schedule a free carrier pickup. And then for these really large shippers, we negotiate contract prices. Maybe they need a different solution. So we call them negotiated service agreements. It often requires a volume commitment, but this is the most effective way for businesses to design a solution, including price, that best meets their needs.
Well, it sounds like we have a great number of options for our commercial mailers. So are there any other tips that you would like to pass on to our commercial and or our retail mailers?
Well, we're really trying to improve the value of mail. We talked about that electronic diversion and the competition we're facing in the marketing segment. So we've done a lot of promotions and incentives. So we are putting out ideas to help make mail more impactful, to improve the ROI when you're trying to get people to buy your product. So these promotions and incentives about making mail sensory or tactile and really cool things that you can do with print, we offer a discount if you'll do that. Or if you'll do emerging technology and do like augmented reality as part of your mailing campaign, or even do an informed delivery. We're so excited about the impact of having an additional eyeballs on your mailing marketing message when you can associate a really a content-rich campaign. So when we take a picture of your image and process your mail piece, when we process it, you can link a digital campaign that goes along with that image. And people get it in their email every day if you sign up for informed delivery. So I know I don't get home till late. I can see what's coming in the mail, and I can click and take action on a mail piece even before I get home, or tell my husband not to throw away that piece. I want to look at it when I get home. So we're really excited about informed delivery, so much so we offer a discount for marketers to put an additional campaign and with that mail piece image. So that's some of the fun stuff that we do on the mail side. We are also trying to encourage growth. The economy has been really hard on the mailing volume this year. All this economic uncertainty, these high interest rates, mail volume has really taken a dive. So we want to encourage mailers to mail more next year than they mailed this year. And if they mail more than 1 million pieces and beat how much they mailed in calendar year 23, we will give a 30% discount.
Wow.
30% discount on that new volume right in 2024. So we're really committed to helping strengthen the mailing industry. We're committed to print and marketing mail. And so we're excited about that. You know, we're showing how excited and committed we are to packages with no holiday surcharge this year. We are really going to help mail out next year to come back to the mail and get that volume back up.
Well, we've gotten a lot of great information today, wouldn't you say, Jonathan?
So much more that goes into it than I could have ever imagined. And I think it's just amazing, all the different programs and, savings, discounts that we offer our commercial mailers. I mean, just absolutely great stuff. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
And Sharon, absolutely thank you for visiting us today here at Mailing It. We welcome you to come back at any time and talk about some of the exciting efforts that we have going on in pricing. Anything you want to add as we close out this afternoon?
No, this has been a lot of fun. I hope people, it can be a little nerdy. I get it. I try not to use economic terms or math terms, but it does take a lot of work. We've got a great team, and we are trying to be responsible as we change prices, but make sure that we have enough revenue to invest and serve the American people.
Well, thank you again for being here. We greatly appreciate it and look forward to what's coming out of pricing next.
Thanks, Sharon.
Before we wrap up this episode, Jonathan and I have a few interesting facts for our Did You Know segment that we'd like to share. I've got a good one for you today, Jonathan.
I can't wait.
You probably know that in the early days, postal customers living in cities and towns, for the most part, had to go to their local post office to get their mail. In some cities, people got home delivery, but they had to pay extra for it. Given that the Postal Service now delivers more than 162 million pieces of first-class mail every day, obviously, lots has changed since then. So, how did we get from there to here? The beginning of free home mail delivery in cities is often credited to Joseph William Briggs, a postal clerk in Cleveland, Ohio. Briggs reportedly thought of free delivery during the winter of 1862. When he would see long lines of women trying to keep warm while waiting to pick up their mail from loved ones fighting in the Civil War.
I'm assuming the experiment was a success.
Undeniably. By 1900, there were more than 15,000 letter carriers in nearly 800 cities bringing mail directly to people's homes.
Very interesting. Now, I've got a good Did You Know, too.
Let's hear it.
Did you know that it wasn't always mandatory for post offices to have unique names?
Aren't most post offices named after where they're located or for someone famous?
That's true, but back in the 1800s, just naming a post office after the town it was in created a lot of confusion. Consider this. In New Jersey alone, 5 townships and 1 borough use the name Washington today. Luckily, we have zip codes now, but before that, having a bunch of post offices with the same name in the same state was a problem for mail delivery. In the 1840s, the post office department tried to fix this by encouraging people to select unique names for post offices.
Well, how did that go?
Apparently, the results were uneven. In Vermont in 1852, for example, mail for the St. Jonathansbury East and St. Jonathansbury Center post offices often went to another post office simply named St. Jonathansbury, obviously causing delays. And then in the 1800s, the post office department tried again. It told local post offices they should have short names that would not resemble the name of any other post office in the United States. Easier said than done. Between 1850 and 1890, the number of post offices increased from more than 18,000 to more than 62,000.
Now that's a lot of post offices.
Yes, and confusion over names became a huge problem for the government. It got so bad that in 1890, President Benjamin Harrison created the U.S. Board on Geographic Names, which actually still exists today. The board created guidelines for naming places in the U.S., including post offices. Today, the Postal Operations Manual requires a post office to normally be named after the town or community it serves. Thanks largely to zip codes and modern sorting technology, that's not a problem.
So, Jonathan, again, another great episode of Mailing It. Very informative. I'm going to tell you, the thing that I took away as a retail customer, forever stamps.
Oh, absolutely.
You got to get them.
I think what really, kind of hit home for me, Carla, was, Sharon had mentioned about the Delivering for America plan and, how it is leveraging, all these new changes, right, to really kind of take us out of that, defective, broken pricing model from the past, helping us get back to financial sustainability. And, I was really impressed with all the different programs that we have to help our commercial mailers save money in spite of all these changes. So absolutely great stuff. I think as a commercial mailer, a lot of amazing things in the pipeline.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned with the DFA, it seems like a lot of our episodes are touching on just how the DFA has created all of these different vehicles. And just what most of our listeners probably don't know, and I think we mentioned it during the podcast, is we are self-funded for the most part.
That is huge.
So it's not like we're raising prices to raise prices. We are raising prices, like you said, to come out of a defective model and to make sure that we are covering our costs. So thanks to everybody for listening. And that's all for this episode of Mailing It. Don't forget to subscribe to Mailing It wherever you get your podcasts and to make sure you don't miss any episodes. And follow along on Instagram at U.S. Postal Service, X, formerly known as Twitter, at USPS, and on Facebook.